I'm 89 years old, and there's something I didn't understand until most of my life was already behind me. It's not about dying. People talk about that part. They whisper about it, or they dress it up with soft words. But that's not the part that stays with you. It's everything before that. It's what slips away while you're still here. I wake up most mornings before the sun now, not because I have somewhere to be, but because my body doesn't know how to sleep the way it used to. The house is quiet. Too quiet sometimes. I sit on the edge of the bed for a while before I stand up, not out of pain, though there is some of that, more because there's nowhere I need to rush to anymore.
When you get to my age, you stop lying to yourself, or at least you try to. I used to think love was supposed to be steady, predictable, safe. I grew up believing that if you showed up, paid the bills, didn't make trouble, that was enough. That was love. That was what a good man did. And for a long time, I thought I was doing it right. I married young. She was 23, I was 26. Her name was Sarah. She laughed easily back then, loud, full laughs that made people turn their heads. I remember thinking I wanted to be around that sound for the rest of my life. I didn't know then how quiet things could become. We had a small apartment, nothing special. The paint peeled in the kitchen and the pipes made that knocking sound every winter, but it was ours. I worked long hours, first at a warehouse, then later in an office. I was proud when I moved indoors, felt like I was moving up, doing something right. She stayed home for a while, then picked up part-time work once the kids came along. We had two, a boy and a girl. I remember holding them when they were babies, feeling something I couldn't put into words. It wasn't loud. It wasn't overwhelming like people describe. It was steady, like a quiet promise. I told myself I would take care of them. That was my role. And I did. I worked, I showed up, I fixed things around the house, paid the mortgage when we moved into something bigger, made sure there was food on the table. From the outside, it all looked fine, maybe even good. But there's something I didn't understand back then. Love isn't built on what you provide. It's built on what you risk. And I risked very little. There were small moments. They didn't feel important at the time. Sarah would try to talk to me in the evenings, not about anything dramatic, just her day, something she read, something she was feeling. And I'd listen, but not really. I'd nod, say yeah at the right times, keep my eyes on the television or the newspaper. I told myself I was tired, that I deserved a little quiet after work, that it wasn't a big deal. There was one night, I don't know why I remember this one more than the others. She asked me if I was happy. Just like that. No build-up. We were sitting at the kitchen table. The kids were already in bed. It was late. I said, "Of course I am." And that was the end of it. I didn't ask her the same question. I didn't want to hear the answer. That was the first time, I think, that I chose comfort over courage. And it didn't feel like a choice at all, just easier. The years passed like that, quietly. No big fights, no dramatic moments, just a slow drifting. We celebrated birthdays, took a few vacations when we could afford it, went to school events, did all the things people do. If you had asked me then, I would have said we were a good family. I believed that, but there were things I avoided. Apologies that sat in my throat and never came out. Conversations I postponed because I didn't want to feel uncomfortable. Moments when she reached for me, not physically, but emotionally, and I stayed where I was. I told myself there would be time later. There's always this idea when you're younger that things can wait, that you can come back to them. You can't. Our daughter moved out first, then our son. The house got quieter. You'd think that would bring us closer, that we'd finally have time to sit and talk the way we used to before life got busy. But by then, we didn't know how. Silence had become normal. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that fills the space so completely you don't even try to break it anymore. We developed routines. Dinner at the same time every night, the same chairs, the same shows. We were polite with each other, kind even, but distant, like two people who had shared a life but not themselves. I noticed it, of course I did, but I didn't say anything, because saying something would mean admitting there was a problem, and admitting that would require courage, the kind I didn't have. The turning point didn't come with a big argument. There was no shouting, no slammed doors. It was quieter than that. She got sick. It started small. Tiredness, then tests, then more tests. I remember sitting in a doctor's office, hearing words that didn't seem real at first. I won't go into the details. That part doesn't need explaining. What matters is this. Time, the thing I thought we had plenty of, suddenly had edges, sharp ones, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Fear, not of losing her, at least not at first. Fear of everything I hadn't said, everything I had avoided, all those small moments I had pushed aside because they felt inconvenient or uncomfortable. They didn't feel small anymore. They felt enormous, and there was no way to go back and do them differently. I tried then. I really did. I started asking questions, sitting with her, turning off the television. I told her things I should have said years earlier, that I loved her, that I appreciated her, that I was sorry. She listened. She smiled sometimes, but there was a distance I couldn't cross anymore, not because she didn't want to, but because too much time had passed. You can't build something in a hurry that you spent decades neglecting. Love doesn't work like that. It doesn't respond to panic. It responds to presence. And I hadn't been present, not in the way that mattered. She passed away on a quiet morning. No drama, no big last speech, just gone. And the house changed that day in a way I can't fully explain. It didn't just get quieter, it got heavier. Every room started holding things I couldn't ignore anymore. Her chair, her cup, the way she used to hum when she thought no one was listening. I found myself replaying moments I had barely noticed when they were happening. That question at the kitchen table, "Are you happy?" I think about that a lot. I never gave her a real answer, and I never asked her the same. That's something I can't fix. People talk about grief like it's about missing someone, and it is, but for me, it's also about seeing clearly, too clearly. You start to understand things in a way that would have changed everything if you had understood them sooner, but you didn't, and now it doesn't matter. That's the part no one prepares you for. At 75, I finally understand love isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's not about keeping things smooth and easy. It's about stepping into the moments that scare you a little, asking the question you're afraid to ask, listening to the answer, even if it's not what you want to hear, saying I'm sorry when it would be easier to stay quiet, saying I love you without waiting for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. There's just the one in front of you, and then it's gone. If this meant something to you, if you saw a piece of your own life in what I've said, then maybe just sit with that for a moment. You don't have to change everything. Life isn't like that. But maybe there's one conversation you've been putting off, one question you've been avoiding, one person you haven't really listened to in a while. That's where it starts. Not with big gestures, with small, honest moments, the kind I kept skipping. These days, I spend a lot of time sitting by the window. There's a tree out front that's been there longer than we lived in this house. I watch it change with the seasons. Leaves come, leaves go. It doesn't rush. It doesn't hold on. It just continues. I think about that sometimes, about how life moves forward whether you show up for it or not, whether you say the things that matter or keep them inside. It keeps going, but that doesn't mean you don't lose something along the way. I talk to her sometimes, out loud. I don't know if that means anything, but it helps me say the things I didn't say when I had the chance. I tell her about the day, about the kids, and how quiet it gets at night. I say I'm sorry more than anything else, not in a dramatic way, just quietly, like a man who finally understands something too late. If this meant something to you, if you saw a piece of your own life in what I've said, then maybe just sit with that for a moment. You don't have to change everything. Life isn't like that. But maybe there's one conversation you've been putting off, one question you've been avoiding, one person you haven't really listened to in a while. That's where it starts. Not with big gestures, with small, honest moments, the kind I kept skipping. These days, I spend a lot of time sitting by the window. There's a tree out front that's been there longer than we lived in this house. I watch it change with the seasons. Leaves come, leaves go. It doesn't rush. It doesn't hold on. It just continues. I think about that sometimes, about how life moves forward whether you show up for it or not, whether you say the things that matter or keep them inside. It keeps going. But that doesn't mean you don't lose